Why is it so important to train branches?
The natural growth habit of many, not all, but many apple varieties and pear varieties, and even European plums, is to grow up in an upward development. When they go upward, those branches, it takes a long time before they become reproductive. So if we can just slant that branch so it's at least a 45-degree angle from the leader from which it originates, then what will happen is the branch will slow down some, and then secondly, you'll start seeing spurs a lot earlier, and that branch gets into a more reproductive cycle much quicker. Whenever you have an upright branch with the subtending crotch from which it develops, is that if you have that narrow crotch, now you're going to have bark inclusion as well, which is where you have the mechanical pressure in the crotch, and then it splits out 4 or 5 years later.
In terms of a narrow crotch, you do not want two branches this close. That's a narrow crotch.
Right.
Does it make it easier to break? It's not as strong if it's
Right.
like that. Is that the case?
Yeah. So what happens is the phloem tissue, that's your food vascular elements, get squeezed on the interior of that crotch. And when they get squeezed, they mechanically become weak, and then that branch will break out. We call that bark inclusion.
Why would that make it weak?
Just think of basically smashing those phloem cells up against one another. And so all of a sudden that phloem tissue is no longer alive, and then it's subject to weakness.
So now let's go to Jennifer. Why did you ask this question?
I was just out at looking at my trees, and I had lots of tons of growth, and it was too vertical. So I started thinking about what exactly to do to try to pull things down. And the approach I've been taking has been using tent pegs, and I use old pantyhose. I don't know if I need to use that, but it strikes me as a little bit more flexible and less prone to perhaps damage the bark. And I ran out of old pantyhose, so I started thinking, okay, what am I going to use instead? And they had these spreaders, which when I looked at it more closely, they had a little spike. And I thought, I'm not crazy about the idea of putting a spike into the bark on my plum trees. I've already lost one plum tree to bacterial canker, and I'm very stressed about damaging bark on the cherry and, well, all of them.
Ron, let's talk about why you're okay with using these spreaders on apple trees and pear trees and not with stone fruits. Can you explain that to us?
It doesn't really harm apple and pear. But what you'll do is anytime you get an abrasion in the bark, meaning a cut or opening in the bark on stone fruit, you welcome canker, bacterial canker setting in. So it can be used in sour cherry, can be used in European plum because you don't have the bacterial canker issues that you run into. That's why for years when we were doing central leader training of trees, many of our growers would just take lath and then make a V cut on both ends. And you could, if you don't have that many trees, let's say you have 30 trees, you basically could probably get away with, say, 10 or 12 of these spreaders per tree, and you can just make these using either a bandsaw or any kind of electric saw to cut that V notch at both ends. And then you can make some that are a foot long. You can make some that are a foot and a half long. In other words, 30 centimeters, 45 centimeters, 60 centimeters, a meter. I've had some that are a meter long, and you can put those in as well. So, you can make them, and they're not abrasive. It's going to be a notch that goes into right below a branch that's on the leader, and then right into the branch you're trying to spread. So they're actually pretty effective and doesn't cost anything, and you don't have the metal.
Tell us about these stretchy bands.
I got a hold of these from Dave Chase at Peach Ridge Orchard Supply, and I started using them in my research orchards, and I absolutely love them. So these black ones are pretty thick, and here I've got two different sizes. I've got an 8-inch hooked up to a 4-inch, and so you can basically link them so that if you want to, you can link 2 or 3 of these if you have a woody branch that needs to be brought down. In this pear tree, I bought this tree in a nursery, potted up, brought it home, all of the typical pears with branching going straight up, and I brought all those branches down successfully just using these.
Oh,
And
so you actually used it not on young branches,
that's
but on more
exactly
mature
right.
branches,
That's
and
exactly
they
right.
hardened up and they lignified in the new
Yep,
position, I guess.
they sure did.